Game number one's map. Jagannatha. What is this? Alright. So, in the bottom left, we've got the red Protoss for Team BIG. He is ShoWTimE. In the top right, as the blue Terran first Cascade, he is souL. And he just defeated Mana 3-0, whereas ShoWTimE defeated Skilless 3-0 after deflecting 2 cheeses. souL was able to defeat Mana in a macro game, 2 macro games, and once just did a kind of a pretty dedicated pressure. I mean, pulling 6-7 SCVs is actually pretty dedicated, but counter to a proxy Stargate, which ended up being very, very accurate, a very good call. So, at the end of the day, yeah, souL gets the more experience, I guess. What's the word? I'm missing a word to describe time. The most recent. There we go. You got TVP practice most recently. I forgot the word recent. But it doesn't really. I mean, Mana and ShoWTimE are already two very different players. Then on top of that, the way that things went down over in the TVP best of 5, I think it's just very different. What's going to happen here in this TVP? I don't know who I would have favored if I was casting Mana souL the entire way through. But since I joined game 3, I already knew that souL was on a roll. So I was like, okay, alright, Mana loses here. I would have been cut 50-50 on that one. Would have been split. But for these guys, I really do feel like ShoWTimE's going to win. We'll see what souL has to say about that. Once again, opening up without a Reaper, just right into the Marine. So ShoWTimE more so banking on a Reaper timing than a Marine timing, loses the probe. If it was a Reaper, he gets in, he gets out, he hides the probe, no big deal. But Marines produce much quicker. ShoWTimE doing nothing fancy. Doesn't get any wall from the natural, doesn't worry about that. Just gets an adept chronoed out. And that is going to be a Stargate build from ShoWTimE. One of the least likely builds to happen. Nah. I'd say the Robo first, the least likely build, right? So, it's still second to Twilight Council. Didn't mean to make it sound so out of the ordinary. It's really not, but you know, maybe still second to Twilight Council. We have seen a lot of players go into Phoenix Colossus. So, what would actually be surprising is if this was an Oracle popping out. That's when I would talk about it. But I'm going to guess it's going to be Phoenix, or Oracle into Phoenix, I should say. If it is just an Oracle, that'd be weird. Cute little block there. Adept coming at the exact right time to both block the factory, scout the factory being on the reactor, and even kill the SCV building that starports. I mean, it died, but I actually think that, you know, everything combined together, it was an alright Adept. Well, 2 more gateways coming down, but I think that is just to help out with the wall. I talked about this in the last TVP, where it's, or the one before last, the product game, where it's a little bit awkward. You know, if you're going for a macro opener, you may have only wanted a second gateway, and they're not even going to produce that much from it. But against the Hellion opener, you do want a wall. In this case, ShoWTimE does in fact go for the single Oracle into Twilight Council. He doesn't play around with Phoenix Colossus like I kind of expected him to. So this is going to be an Oracle for scouting, a little bit of harassment. It does help out with the Hellion drop as well. And then into Blink. Unless he takes a real risk and only goes for charge. That just seems like a poorer idea in general. Charge would be great if I guess you knew there was going to be a tank push following this up. But like the Blink makes so much more sense to control the game, to go into the later stages, and to defend against someone who is known for his Widowmine drops, I think, at this point. And who you know obviously has Hellbats. Well, I didn't think it was going to be Hellbats, but they would have had Hellion drop. Now, this is a Hellbat push against a Protoss player, which, well, I'm not surprised doesn't work. Going right for that shield battery, I think, is the best he could do, unfortunately. Like, it's a weird build to see versus Protoss. I really didn't think that's what he was going to do. I thought he was going to do a Hellion drop or run by, and then a Marine drop or run by, if you will, with the Marines, right? Like, just a dual-pronged attack. Instead, it was a Hellbat push. I think it is a lot better. It was a lot scarier when someone, A, doesn't have defensive situations in mind, right? And then B, doesn't have a shield battery. So no shield battery, a few less units. You see he's just thinking about macroing, like, okay, I could see that working out, but that was a bit weird. The Widowmine drop will hopefully do a lot more damage, and in fact, it absolutely will. ShoWTimE's not paying attention. He was microing on the other side of the map. Oh no, he loses 8 probes. I guess it could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse, because at least his Oracle grabs 4 SCVs on her own, but damn. Oof. Could have been so much better. That could have been, like, easily 12 or 14 probes, right? Like, I'm not crazy. It looks like the Widowmines did not successfully answer into the natural. This one gets taken out. This one, oh, gets 4 more probes. There you go. There you go. Oh, that one gets a Stalker. I didn't even see that one. Shit. Shit. All right. Cool, cool, cool. That's more what I was expecting with how late a reaction there was from ShoWTimE. He was only now getting a Robo, by the way. So the Oracle was kind of the only thing able to provide detection, but she used her Pulsar beam, so she couldn't revelate. And then even if she did, the revelation would not have covered every single Widowmine. So a cannon had to be built. Now a Robo is being built, but that was a wonky start to this game because, you know, that ended up doing as much damage as souL wanted for 4 Widowmines and a medevac to be dedicated to it. Ended up being alright. To say it was extremely good would be disingenuous. It's not that. I mean, the 3rd Nexus is still cranking out probes. So ShoWTimE might have lost a decent amount there. He's still up by 11 workers. You know, against 2 mules, that's amazing, but it is good. And ShoWTimE still has that map control. Viking gonna go in for a little bit of harassment, and then also a Viking in the main base. Gonna meet a cannon. Unless it target fires, and it is being controlled currently. ShoWTimE, on the other side of the map, just really thought it was going to be all about him on the offensive, and these Vikings have done a surprisingly good job of killing probes and pulling back units. Damn. 8 more probes go down, so in total, 21 probes have gone down. That is pretty nasty. I mean, that is definitely a Nexus and then some. So ShoWTimE could have easily been on his way to a 4th Nexus if he had defended everything perfectly. It's not only that he defended stuff perfectly, he had extra money to produce a Nexus with. It's also that he would have like done that plus known that souL didn't really have that sort of a follow-up push. So he really could have been playing some extremely perfect macro games, but he messed up, plain and simple, against the harassment. First, the Widowmine drop, which really should have been dealt with faster and easier if he had just paid attention. It's still awkward because he loses a bunch of mining time, but yeah, doesn't lose as many probes. And then, oh, those Vikings, really catching him by surprise. So 4th Nexus finally comes down alongside double upgrades and Colossus production. Now that stim and combat shields are done, a tank is positioned. ShoWTimE really can't do very much here. Needs to be careful about his Oracle control. But the Oracle is fantastic for covering the medevacs, which, well, I guess they don't need to cast Revelation on the medevacs if the Stalkers kill them anyways. So the point is, souL can't really get around ShoWTimE's army without ShoWTimE knowing about it. Which means ShoWTimE still going to get a pretty damn safe 4th base. He's going to get double Colossus production. He is actually even going to add in a Phoenix, but I think that might just be for purely, like, you know, defense up here kind of thing. Just letting him know if there's a drop on the way. He's got observers over there already, but that's the only, I mean, 1 Phoenix, like, the only thing I can think of, right? Army is already prepared. Oh, a little bit. Has to blink back, but took out a Widowmine, cast Revelation. 1 Colossus is not quite enough, though. Here's the rest of the Colossus coming forward now, but uh-oh. Ooh, a few more units are necessary. He was looking a little bit thin on the front lines to defend the Colossus, but oh, that's so funny. The Widowmine doesn't have high ground vision. I was like, how is that not killing the Oracle? It didn't have high ground vision. That's amazing. Anyways, looking a little bit thin to defend the Colossus, but it was enough, and it was 3 Colossus. You know, if it was just that one, it's been pounced on, it's dead. souL drops his Widow Mines, I guess kind of covering the path and also scouting if there's going to be an immediate counter. But ShoWTimE is still really getting himself situated. 4th base up with gases, getting his upgrades, adding on disruptors. Was briefly scary for a moment there, just like ShoWTimE wasn't quite all together to defend his 4th base, but he got there pretty quickly. And I overall feel a bit better for ShoWTimE. souL has definitely not fallen very far behind. His 3rd Nexus, or 3rd Command Center, sorry. Yeah, it was later, but his 4th Command Center already almost done. Getting ready for static defense and being a planetary is really quite the good setup. And since he took an okay fight there on the attack on the left, he traded out with a couple of gateway units. Like, that was actually pretty good. So supplies look even, upgrades look even. However, it is ShoWTimE adding on those disruptors. It really makes me worry for souL's preparation against that, right? He's adding on Vikings, he's adding on Ghosts, but there's no direct hard counter against the disruptor for a Terran player. That is all just about splits and finding them in correct positions. Good Widow Mine shot to help out on the right side. ShoWTimE knows that this is the time where Terrans would be splitting up their army. Sometimes, as I was talking about earlier on in the cast, like sometimes souL just actually does 1 or 2 drops and then turtles. This is not one of those games. He's actually trying to apply pressure in multiple areas while macroing quite well back at home. The scan's going to reveal still a very small army, so as souL collects all of his army together, ShoWTimE's going to need to do the exact same thing, and ShoWTimE does figure that out. He's got a little bit of scouting every which way, so even though he doesn't have a direct scout and stuff because his Oracle just died, he knows where to be. The Vikings going from the left side, trying to find an avenue of attack on the Colossus without the Stalkers being able to interrupt them. But ShoWTimE was pretty much as quickly reacting to that as souL was trying to do it. So it's not a lot of Stalkers, only 1 Archon, but enough to shoo away the Vikings for now. I mean, as long as the Colossus are involved in the fight, it can be okay. It's when the Vikings take out the Colossus before a fight is even started, that's when things are really scary. So this moment's kind of scary. 1 Colossus not getting any shots off before dying. 2nd one a little bit vulnerable, but that's where the shield batteries come in. Stalker's actually not being paid attention to as ShoWTimE, I guess, went back to macro or something like that. He's even thinking about taking the engagements. I don't know if he's right there yet, though. 2nd Colossus is going to fall without adding too much damage. 3rd Colossus is going to fall without adding any damage. souL taking some okay trades and keeping a lot of his Vikings alive. But ShoWTimE now on like 8 disruptors. The EMP stops the Nexus from being saved. With or without it, that might have been just too much firepower, but ShoWTimE's not going to try and jump on top of the rest of the army. He's got DTs trying to jump on top of a planetary, but souL with excellent defense. He's got a missile turret, he's got the quick repair. He does still have to pick up on the front lines and get the heck out of there, but when he does that, the Vikings come in for a little bit of a flyby, is that what we're going to call it? And a recall has to be used on at least a portion of the army. The scan's going to reveal that. And that's going to be souL feeling quite good about this game. He knows he's not going to lose any of his economy. In fact, his 5th base even trying to be on the way. It's not quite yet, but it's clearly in position to do so. And he now has time to add on some Liberators, add on more army, and try and get a good concave on the Disruptor count, which is still scary. 9 Disruptors? You can fire a lot and still have a lot of ammo. But this is kind of awkward. I thought souL was going to find a good position, but he's actually the opposite. He chased down the Zealots and DTs off to the left and then didn't even have a scan, so he lost a couple of units. DT Blink coming in helpful there. Not just saving the DTs, but dragging the army further away from the defense. souL entirely out of position. Had a sensor tower to the left, but maybe he really needed one to the right. The Liberators are trying to hold on by themselves, but there's still a decent amount of Stalkers, so it's really just the Liberators trying to find the most abusive positions possible. Only 1 has gone down so far, but now ShoWTimE just like circumvents them. Unless he sees an opportunity, he just goes around, kills command centers, kills production, kills SCVs, and that is game. ShoWTimE takes game number 1. That's not how I thought that was going to end. I thought that game was going to go on for a little while longer, but souL moved his entire army to deal with the DTs. I guess he thought he had an extra 30 seconds, because I think that's all he needed. I think he needed 30 seconds, and then he would have had 6 Liberators, 4 to 6 Liberators with range, guarding those chokes. And then it's like, yeah, still ShoWTimE could have broken 6 Liberators, but it gets a little bit testy. Instead, the Liberators are just coming out. and ShoWTimE was already killing the third. So. Sometimes he's like a roly-poly bug. Or he'll be all curled up, but then occasionally he'll like open up and show his belly. He loves the belly scritches. souL needs a minute. Thinking about that last game. What could have gone better? Death Aura will be game 2's map. Could see souL playing a very similar style, but maybe without the Hellbat push. I mean, the Widowmine drop past the Hellbat push did deal a decent amount of damage. I really thought the game was quite even when it ended. Well, 30 seconds before it ended, I thought it was quite even. But yeah, I think you can do the Widowmine drop and hope it does that much damage again without the little Hellbat push. Which, if it's part of the distraction, I'm like, okay, but it wasn't even really part of the distraction, was it? I don't know, it wasn't actually what it like ended the game or put souL like so behind or anything like that, but it did look awkward. In the bottom right, we got the red Protoss ShoWTimE up 1. Top left of Death Aura, it is the blue Terran souL. This is one of his... He's got a couple appearances in the finals, actually. But I'm not sure he's got more than a couple. Maybe like 4 or 5 is my guess. Because I know I've cast him in the finals at least once before. And I've cast a lot of the European finals. I definitely haven't cast all of them. So I think I heard about it once before. So that's 3. And then that's going to be my guess. If someone wants to fact check it, go ahead. But souL typically knocked out by a Hero Marine. Defeated him today. Or a Clem. Definitely could defeat Clem in a TvT, no problem there. Just, well, no problem. It's doable, but it is hectic. Or he gets knocked out by a ShoWTimE or a Lambo. Like, yeah, he gets knocked out by a lot of the people we would, I guess, talk more about when it comes to the European scene. souL's in this really tricky place. He always has been, honestly, where it's like he's a great practice partner. He's really high up there on ladder. He's kind of a unique player, so I think he can like really build a fan base. But like it just never seems like he's really able to have that one series or that one tournament where everyone's like, "Oh shit!" Like, "Oh okay, like this guy's amazing. This guy's super cool." In fact, in some of the highlight moments of his career, times when it's been like, "Okay, this is the moment. This is your time to shine," he's fallen a little short. I think he's very consistent now, but 2 or 3 years ago he had a couple of series where it's like, well, he beats this guy, and then silly decision after silly decision, just really bad luck on his part. Doesn't happen as much anymore. It still is kind of that level of like, well, you're very good, but you're not quite able to push past a guy like ShoWTimE. Currently, the situation right now is ShoWTimE's up 1-0, but the rest of the best of 5 to play out, I'm not saying that souL is going to lose. I don't think it's that one-sided. Last game does make me a little bit worried. And that's harsh, because it was kind of one, doy move. It was one, oh, I was out of position, that was my mistake. But yeah, I feel better for ShoWTimE here. souL is finishing up his natural, but he knew the Adept was going to be on the way. His Reaper wasn't going to be back at home to help defend, but I was going to say, the Reaper might be able to get a couple of probes and then come back to defend. It instead died. The bunker's still gonna do the trick, of course, but I mean, the Reaper just dying in that fashion without getting that probe is... It sucks. Didn't scout the Stargate either. Oh no. Had to come in from the natural because the wall is, the hop-up is cleared. Or not cleared, sorry. I'm a little scared, but souL is getting a Cyclone. So this could turn around. If the Cyclone bops the Oracle, and I think I'll be back to being like, oh, okay, whatever. Game's even. It's gonna be a 1-1 and then 2, so not going up to a starport. Not going for harassment. And this was a map where souL was really pushing the Widowmine drops for like a whole season. But not today, not right now. Actually going into something a little bit trickier. It would be tricky if the Oracle wasn't almost guaranteed to scout this. Now let's see how fast ShoWTimE's reactions are. Okay, pretty quick, but oh yeah, that's the thing. So on one hand, quick enough to save the Oracle, that's great. On the other, if it's too quick, if it's too much of a jerky movement, then he doesn't get the scout, which like, you know, it's one of those conundrums. Like, well, I could have saved the Oracle, but then I wouldn't have gotten the scout. Good news is, he managed to do both. So he did save the Oracle, but he also got the scout. Good enough revelation to see that it is a 3 barracks with 1 factory. And he also sees, interesting, so it's 1 tech lab. Now, ShoWTimE can't know that this is not STIM. If he somehow could know this was combat shields, and he'll eventually figure it out when combat shields appear on the Marines. Oh, the Oracle barely lives again. Then he would know a push is on the way. But right now, unless his Oracle gets back in to see that there's no starport yet still, unless that happens, I don't think he knows about the push. Oh, actually he does. He does. Well, I think he's definitely prepared for it, but he hasn't gotten the confirmation on it yet. I mean, it's a popular enough follow-up to this build, but I think he would want confirmation. There's the confirmation. The revelation, the Stalker's gonna try and tag this while they can, but the blink's actually not done, so the Oracle Stasis actually locked the Cyclone initially. Now the Cyclone's out of it, grabs a Stalker, is going to take another Stalker down with it. No, not quite. I mean, if ShoWTimE loses the second Stalker at this point, he's still... he wants a Cyclone, he wants it so bad, he wants it so bad. He still is buying a lot of time. Oh, they didn't grab it. Oh no, he thought he would get it. Oh, you saw that, right, guys? Like, he thought he would grab it. That's why he pulled the Stalker back. He thought the shot would go off. Oh. Anyways. Now, that bought a lot of time, but losing these Stalkers would not be good enough. So losing one's okay, but definitely pull back. As I was saying, I think he does know about it, or at least apprehensive, because the shield batteries are on the way. Well, that confirmation with the scouts, a few more shield batteries are on the way. Blink is finally done, but he's taking a lot of damage on these Stalkers. The Marines taking those extra shots from the Stalkers with their combat shields. That's why you get it. It's a couple SCVs being pulled to help prepare the tanks as they come forward. It's only 1 right now, but we got 3 in total making their way across Death Aura. And ShoWTimE was trying to get a high ground start to this push, but oh, coming from behind, grabbing a tank unsieged. And only taking a couple of shots from the siege tank is actually pretty damn good. He's going to cut off reinforcements for souL to work with what he has on the front lines, which isn't much. He catches another tank unsieged. Oh, fantastic stuff there from ShoWTimE. Lots of Marines with combat shields left over, but those are microable. You can actually micro against that. Combat shields gives them another life for a direct head-on attack, but it doesn't give them any more microability against the Stalkers, especially since the Stalkers have that blink. souL's push, I think, is going to be cleaned up. It looked a little bit dicey as ShoWTimE was pushed back into his natural, but that was actually not quite true. He had a lot of Stalkers being built around this third that came in from behind at the exact right moment, and as long as ShoWTimE doesn't get overzealous in his defense, I mean, it's a weird way to put it, but as long as he takes this seriously, I think he's got this. He does indeed. That's not going to be good enough. ShoWTimE takes it 2-0. I think he just he was like kind of stiffing around. He's like, you know what? Kind of smells like it's going to be like a push. Kind of smells that way. And then he just actually got the scout. And he was like, yep, that's a push, all right. My MMR is in the gutter, but I'm GM with cats. I'd rather take being GM with cats than being GM in Starcraft. There's not many special feelings that are on par with you visiting a friend or a shelter or something and their cat actually likes you, you know? Being the cat whisperer is a really good feeling. The cat cat whisperer. As I yell at my cat and wake him up. If he was really bothered by me bothering him, he wouldn't sleep here. He'd be sleeping in that hammock like he used to do. This one's slightly bigger though, so he likes it. Just ever had a cat who rolled over so eagerly for belly scratches. Like, all my cats have pretty much always been fine with their belly being touched. We just would always, you know, enough playtime with them when they were kittens, they never would be bothered. But this cat is like, I mean, he just wouldn't survive in the wilderness. The first sign of anyone or anything, and he'd be like, scratches? I'd be like, cat. You silly. Game number 3 already underway on Romanticide. In the top right up 2, he is ShoWTimE. And in the bottom right, it is the Terran souL. Tried a macro game. Didn't work out, but I really thought it was an okay macro game. It really did seem to come down to just pulling his entire army out of position a little bit too quickly. And then the second game going for kind of a good old-fashioned 2-base attack didn't work out either. I do think that on top of ShoWTimE kind of figuring it out, putting the pieces together, already having an idea of what was going to happen, and then getting the confirmation as it came across the map, that was all good, right? I do think that souL was kind of hoping that in general it wasn't going to be an Oracle. Like, it's not always going to be that Combat Shields push with that particular setup, but it's probably the most popular of that particular setup. As opposed to adding on a starport and playing out the game from that position. It's kind of an odd macro build, if that's your, you know, where you want to go with it. But it can happen. I think in general, souL was kind of hoping that it wouldn't be a Stargate. That there'd be no scouting whatsoever. That all ShoWTimE would see is the front lines, which is a barracks, maybe the factory, but then nothing else. Because that's what you would see if you went for a Twilight Council opener. A Robo opener would have gotten a fast enough observer, sure. But then might have been vulnerable to the actual tank push itself. Whereas the Stargate scouted, and then the Stalker numbers grew with Blink finishing up. So it was kind of one of those like technology plus numerous items. A Robo opener, yeah, the observer gets across the map, sure, scouts it, but do they have enough units to defend it? You know, slow Zealots and a single Colossus might not have done it. Anyways. I'm getting at that maybe that wasn't the best setup for souL. And that does happen. Starcraft is such a imperfect game, though. It's like, there's no game, well, very few games anyways, where someone doesn't fuck up.
Apparently you are doing
it just doesn't, you know, both sides are doing it, just who is fucking up more often or worse. Thank you, Gauntlet Wizard, for the 5-month resub. That even when it looks like it's just like, oh, this build is strong against this build, it's like, well, the execution, let's see what happens. I do think that was an instance of, like, a stronger build against what souL was doing. ShoWTimE is once again gonna open up the Stargate. I mean, clearly it's now a trend, but considering that was only, at the time, the second game, souL was like, okay, 1 Stargate opener? Is he really gonna do another one? Is he really gonna get that scouting? Yeah. Could have easily been a Twilight Council opener. But now that's happened twice in a row, souL might just be predicting the 3rd time. Cute save in the SCV, still dies though. Marine gets a couple extra shots in. But most importantly, the orbital is going to be on the way. Command center was not stalled out at all. So anyways, okay, this is interesting. So he swaps onto the reactor, the factory, as fast as possible, but he still goes into a Reaper. So specifically, he wants that Reaper to bop the Stalker or the Adept out of the wall. But to my point about him predicting the Stargate, you see there's no scouting whatsoever. He's already getting a Viking. I think he's kind of predicting it and kind of also hoping for it so that he can bop it and then do a push. We gotta talk about this push first, though. It's kind of like a concave of units. Now he's gonna tuck back in, kind of block him out. The Reaper dies first, then the wall happens, the Oracle appears, and my god, that could not have been more perfect. My god. Any of y'all try this at home, and you are so dead. All the Hellions get through. The Reaper magically kills 10 probes because he fucked up so badly. Like, That was perfect. Wow, okay. All right, well. GG, am I right? Am I right, guys? Soul's totally dead. No, not quite. But that was not the start he wanted. That was not the start. Oh, gosh. All right, so Oracle, uses its zappy energy on the Hellions, but it's still alive, and it can still circumvent a Viking or a Cyclone. I think more importantly, it can scout any push. That is what's most important. A medevac is on the way. A Liberator is going to try and draw units out of position, or just, get a couple of cheeky kills. But that medevac means aggression. Oracle's going to get a scout. Ooh, the Viking, very good against the Oracle. Nah, it's going to live. You see a Viking and a Cyclone, and you have to take the threat of a push seriously. Like, it's not always the case. They're not always going to pull some SCVs with this, but you got to take it seriously. And ShoWTimE, I think, already is. He's going to try and save the Oracle from the deadly Viking, and in the process, not only does he save the Oracle, barely, but he does. He also takes down a unit that would help a lot on the ground. Still feels so good for ShoWTimE. Okay, this could get kind of funky. One soccer. Or a handful of damage, actually. Not killing too many units so far, but now the two Hellions almost dead. The medevac almost dead, but the Cyclone getting, one stalker plus a very good tank shot, actually. That tank brought 3 or 4 stalkers down into the yellow. Liberator in the main did manage to kill a couple of probes before ShoWTimE could react. That's also distracting his focus, as well as taking up some warp ins they could use on the front lines right now. So that's where the Liberator can really come into play. If it didn't die, it could have also come in to help with the choke here, but it did die. Tanks once again on the backside, grabbing not just the tank, but also the medevac. Ooh, it didn't fly with the rest of the army. It floated over to the right side. ShoWTimE is just very good at this game. Wow, he saved the stalker. He gets the Cyclone. He chases down the Marines. soul is not going to tap out, but this is so awkward. Oh, that one blink forward is actually quite good. Now he can blink forward with the rest of them in just a second here. Or not. Doesn't have to anyways. There are some really, really cool micro moves happening in this game. soul's dead. Yeah, if he loses this tank, he's definitely dead. Well, there you go. GG! ShoWTimE takes the 3-0 and looked, I mean, more and more dominating in each game. It was like the first game, oh, even enough, cool. We get a good TVP, and then the next 2 games was just, especially that last game, was quite perfect. Impressive stuff. soul does still take second place, so he gets a bit of cash and a couple of EPT points, I believe.